The Make Do Review Halloween Spooktacular. Hello everyone and welcome to the Make Do Review Halloween Spooktacular. My name is Jack.
My name is Emily.
And today on the Make Do Review podcast, we are reviewing Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Very excited about this episode.
Such a good theme.
It is a very good theme.
How are you today, Emily?
I'm not doing too badly. It's my brother's birthday today, so we're feeling good.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday. Thank you for letting us use your studio every week.
So, we are talking about The Shining, released on the 5th of October 1980 with a runtime of 2 hours and 26 minutes, directed by none other than Stanley Kubrick, cinema's mastermind. Written, obviously adapted by Stephen King's novel The Shining, and the screenplay was done by Stanley Kubrick and Diane Johnson.
Did you know that Stephen King actually wrote a screenplay for them, and they decided not to read it, and they instead wrote their own screenplay in 11 months?
Yeah, and even though they did that, they changed it every day.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where like actors like Jack Nicholson just stopped reading the script. He would only read the script on the day it was given to him because Stanley Kubrick kept changing the scenes.
That's mad, isn't it? Can you imagine doing that on set?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about this film is actually the behind the scenes stuff, and what Stanley Kubrick put his cast through, like the actual horrors that they put them through, and especially Shelley Duvall.
Oh yeah.
Which reminds me, starring Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy, Danny Lloyd as Danny. Weird enough. And of course, Scatman Crothers is Halloran,
The chef.
So what did you think of the film, Emily?
I am in two minds. When I first saw this film many years ago, I absolutely loved it. It was really creepy. It kind of freaked me out, and there was a lot of things about it that didn't quite make sense, which I think just added to the tension. Whereas having watched it again, the acting in it is phenomenal. I mean, watching them quite rightly be absolutely terrified and frustrated was amazing, but I don't find it as scary, and I think it might be because I've watched it before. I know what's coming, so that tension's not there anymore. What about you?
Bit of a controversial opinion coming up here, so hold on to your hats. I think this movie's really overrated.
Right.
Straight out, it's not scary. It really drags as well. We watched it last night, and I was really struggling to actually finish the film because I've seen it before, and I think it's legit a one-time film.
Yeah,
you watch it once, and even when the first time I watched it, which was actually not too long ago, I was still a bit like, is that it? It's okay. The best thing about this film is the cinematography, the score, and Jack Nicholson, really.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get good until the end. It's such a long process, which I guess is the point. It's meant to show like how long they're actually like there for. They're there for 5 months. It's supposed to drag that out.
I tell you what surprised me actually is obviously it has quite a long intro with Jack getting the job and Wendy with Danny and the whole doctor having to come and see him because he's like blacked out. So that process I felt was quite dragged out. But once they arrived in the hotel and it got shut down, I feel like they changed and things got more dramatic quite quickly. And it might be because for some of the days they would only show like little snippets, but I felt like it got quite fast paced at that point, and then it reached the climax area and it slowed down again.
It does. It does a bit,
because almost straight away, like it's the first day and Jack's already acting slightly strange, so I felt like it almost kind of like went a bit fast just to get over this period of time, and then it got into the big bit and it slowed down again.
Yeah, like I said, it's essentially it's kind of a simple plot.
Yeah.
It starts off with the character Jack Torrance. He takes this like what was it, like a 3-hour drive to this Mountain Peak hotel.
Yeah.
And he's there for an interview to be the caretaker of the hotel while it's closed down over the winter. And and obviously he's like, but this would be like the perfect location for like skiing and stuff, so I don't understand why it's closing down. And then they say like, oh, it actually costs a lot more money to keep this place open because we need to clear the roads every day because of the snow. We get really bad winters here, so he's there to make sure everything's still running, like the power and the boilers and repair things if they break and all that stuff like that. They're just there to look after the place. But he sees this as this great opportunity for isolation, to do his stories.
Meanwhile, Wendy is back at home with Danny, and Danny has this little bit. He says the little boy that lives in his mouth, and when the Tony, and when the little boy talks, he comes up with a little finger, which you were saying
apparently
Lloyd came up with.
Yeah, Danny Lloyd came up with that in his audition when he does the, like, Daddy's not here.
Yeah.
Like, he did that on the spot, which is quite impressive. The stuff about this kid during the whole, like, process of this film is actually really amazing stuff.
I know.
He's like a little boy, and this is his first film, I think. And he's like doing all this like on the spot stuff. It's really impressive. But yeah, he's got this thing called The Shining, which he meets someone else who is Halloran, the chef. He's got it too when they go to the hotel.
Yeah.
And he explains that it's like a secret gift. That his grandmother called The Shining.
So the reason why they notice that is because before, when Wendy and Danny are at home whilst Jack is out for his interview, Danny has a blackout because Tony shows him stuff in the hotel.
He's asking like, Tony, why do you not want to go to the hotel? And he's like, please show me, please tell me. And then he does, and then
so
it's like clips from what's going to happen.
And then when they're getting shown around the hotel when they first arrive, Halloran and Danny have this telepathic kind of exchange, which then Halloran explains to Danny when they're alone about The Shining.
And then it's pretty much just this psychological horror thriller for the rest of the movie. It's like, it comes up with the title cards, what day it is, and then Jack's slowly and like creepily getting more and more like distant from everyone else, and then he starts like saying really weird things, and and then obviously all hell breaks out loose. But the thing is, even the way I see it, it's a simple plot, but it's got all these different like hidden themes and like possibilities, and like people have made different theories about this film. There's like so many different theories about the ending.
So this is the thing. People argue, well, is it psychological or is it supernatural?
Yeah, exactly. But we'll get to that when we get to that point. So yeah, you saying you enjoyed the film, but you don't know if you enjoyed it as much as you did the first time you saw it.
I think the first time I saw it, it was kind of scary and the tension and everything. Whereas now, because I know what's happening, I'm looking at it more as an actor and being like, wow, like look at the way they're playing that character and knowing the background of what happened on set, like behind the scenes and stuff. I have a new appreciation for the film, but it's not necessarily for the film itself.
Yeah. I could see that.
in a nutshell.
Okay, so now this is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen the film, go watch it now. Come back and listen to us talk about it.
Yes.
Spoiler warning starting now.
You're listening to the Make Do Review.
Okay, straight off the bat, I want to say this. Shelley Duvall, when I first saw this film, actually before I saw this film, everyone said the same thing. Shelley Duvall is probably the worst thing about this film, or whatever. Her acting's not great. You know, she's playing alongside Jack Nicholson. It's not as good. But actually watching it the second time now, I don't see it anymore. I think she's actually pretty good in this as well.
Yeah, so do I.
She's not as bad as everyone says. Like, maybe at the ending she does get a bit, like, over the top, but that's just because if you know what happened, like, during the filming process, like, Stanley Kubrick, like, properly drilled her. Like, he wouldn't, you know, he would make her do like 100 takes of something every time, and like he would like scream at her like just to get it right. And then when it got closer to the end, they actually resented each other. They hated each other, and it got to the point where Shelley Duvall's hair was falling out, and then she actually got sick during the filming. Like, she was actually bedridden. And, you know, and you have to, like, give it up for her, you know. And even, like, Jack Nicholson said no one could have done that, you know, as well as she did, because it's probably the hardest role that any female actor or actor could ever do.
I think that I can see why people will get bored with that character, but you have to remember, for the majority of the film, she is the only one that is of sound mind. Her child's got this Tony thing, he's got The Shining, and her husband's going doolally, and they're stuck in this hotel, just the three of them, for 5 months. And things are happening to her child, and she's trying to come to her husband, and her husband's going off on her. So, although she might seem annoying, you have to think of it in respect to the fact that she's the only one of sound mind that is trying to cope with these two characters, and she just doesn't seem to know what to do. And it's not until the end where she's clearly terrified, but she's like, right, we've just got to get Danny out no matter what happens. So, yeah, I can see why you think maybe she's like, not you personally, but people would think she's like a boring character, but she's like the level playing field, as it were, in the spectrum of craziness.
Yeah, it's crazy because obviously, like, both Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall have both came out and said like how much people like praise Stanley Kubrick for this film, and they don't really give any recognition for anyone else that was a part of the film.
Yeah.
Because even though like Stanley Kubrick he's like the puppet master, you know, he's the director, he's in charge, but all the stuff, all the shit and stuff that he put the cast, the crew, and everyone through, you know, they don't really get any like recognition for it, which is kind of like it's kind of crappy. But I think nowadays I think people can see an appreciation. You know, the first thing you think about this film is Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Probably.
What I find interesting as well is obviously they put the actors and the crew and everything through such a hard time, but for Danny, they made it out that he was just starring in a drama to stop him becoming too scared in real life.
Stanley Kubrick was so overprotective of Danny Lloyd, the kid, because this was his first role and he wanted him to be as happy as he could. So there was like scenes like, you know how the kitchen scene where you know, Scatman Crothers and Danny Lloyd are talking and they're having ice cream. Apparently they did that in maybe 100 takes, and it put like Scatman Crothers in like he was really over the edge with it. He was getting emotional about it because he couldn't handle it anymore. And then they're going up to Danny and going, "Are you okay with this? Is this okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm cool, man. Yeah, I can keep going." You know what I mean?
Eating ice cream.
You know, obviously, because like you said, a really great thing last night is when it comes to kid actors, their imagination isn't like breached. You know,
it's not limited.
It's not limited. So they're just sitting there, and you know they can come up with anything they want. You know, it's sometimes it's quite amazing what kid actors can come up with on the spot, because all they may think it's real as well. And yeah, I don't think this kid gets enough credit. I think he's
No.
like fantastic in the film.
See that shot where it's him and Halloman, they're having kind of the same vision. They're in separate places though. And Danny is just kind of shaking and like foaming at the mouth and like
it's
drooling.
creepy. Yeah.
And like I don't know how old he was when that was being filmed, but to be able to do that so intensely, like if you watch the clip, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. What would you say was your like favorite moment in the film?
I really like the shot of Danny when he's on his bike.
His big wheel.
His big wheel. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
But I oh my gosh. I also really love that that thing of where Jack is in the bar and in the gold room and it's completely empty, and he says about how he'd give his soul for a drink, and then he kind of looks almost slightly behind the camera and starts talking to this person, Lloyd, about how it's dead tonight. And as you pointed out, it looks like he's making a joke to himself, like there's no barman and it's a bit slow tonight because he's
slow
the only
tonight.
one there.
Hey, Lloyd.
And then and then the camera snaps back and he's actually talking to Lloyd.
Yep. It's very clever.
That was just so clever. Yeah, so I really like that shot as well, that moment. What about you?
It's got to be the bit where at the stairs and Shelley Duvall swinging the bat at Jack, and he's just like, it's just so impressive, Jack. Like I'm assuming that must have took like a million takes or whatever, just because even like the most simple shot would even make them do like 100 times. So I wonder how many times that must have took. But it legit is my favorite. I know a lot of people would say the most iconic scene is probably the bathroom, with the axe. But that's my favorite because that's like the beginning of it. And he's like, "Darling, light of my life."
I have to say, this earlier in that same scene where Wendy is looking through his manuscript and is just seeing
all
pages
work
and
no
pages and
play,
pages.
make Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, and that the shots showing her looking through them last for quite a while, actually.
It does, yeah.
And you just see on her face her slowly getting more and more terrified, and I think that as an actress to have to hold that for so long and slowly get
it is
more
a long
and
shot,
more disturbed.
Well,
That was a beautiful shot as well.
I like the little details of like the manuscripts where it's like sometimes it would say like yog or like instead of boy, like little mistakes, which I think is quite good because it's on a typewriter, obviously, and then it makes you think, did someone actually have to type all those pages out?
Did.
How annoying would that be?
But also the fact that although it had those little mistakes in it, the layout of each page was very
different.
precise but different.
Yeah.
So they'd obviously had to show that Jack had.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was just the typewriter, like the person doing that, like they're going crazy and they're doing it as quick as they can, so it starts to get a bit messy.
You have 1 hour.
Maybe it was probably like a last minute thing where they're like, I want like 100 pages of all it says is all work and no play, mate Jack a dull boy, and then like right. Set designer, quickly do that, and then they're like, okay,
we're rolling in 5 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's my favorite scene because you just see him like slowly like descend into madness.
Oh yeah.
Even with Shelley Duvall, she's even like going crazy as well. Like she's like just swinging this bat around, and he's like, "Give me the bat." That's my I think it's just so great. I just love that line when it's like, I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. Yeah. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just think this film, if you're going to watch it, I think you have to watch it, do a bit of research behind what actually happened on set first, because I feel like it will make you appreciate it more. And also just really take the time to appreciate the acting in it, because it is quite a simple storyline. Really, it's a storyline about someone getting cabin fever.
Yeah.
But that's when there's this argument of supernatural versus psychological. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things because people like there's like so many theories about this film, and there's like little tiny details and like what I would consider mistakes, but obviously it's been said like everything that Stanley Kubrick does is not a mistake, it's intentional. You know, like there's like videos out there on YouTube about explaining the layout of the hotel and how it doesn't make sense. Like when Jack is going into the interview room in the first, in the first act, it doesn't make sense because when he goes in, there's a window, but behind it, logically, should be another hallway. So stuff like that, it just makes you wonder, like, was that just a set mistake and they just didn't realize, or was it intentional? Like,
I read another one just before we started recording.
Yeah.
That, apparently anything electrical that should have wires coming out of it and stuff doesn't have any wires. So nothing with electricity is plugged in. So again, is that just a set thing where they were like, oh, it's just a tiny little detail, we won't bother with it, it's too much hassle, or was it done intentionally?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I never noticed that, so I think that's quite...
The only time that it kind of made me notice, but I was like, oh, it's probably just like not part of the story, but it's probably just oh my god, a technical thing, was, when Danny is now kind of possessed by Tony and he's sat there having breakfast, and when Wendy's like, you just sit here and watch your cartoons, you notice that it never shows the TV on, but it also doesn't have like the flashing like lights and stuff on his face, which you would get if you were watching TV. But I just thought, oh, that's probably just a technical thing. But then in an earlier shot where Danny goes off to get his fire engine, they're watching TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, in the hallway.
So it's like, is it technical or is it like purposeful? I don't know. I think the turning point is that scene where Jack is locked in the storage cupboard and the ghost of Mr. Grady seemingly opens the lock, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah, like, shout out to a channel called Dead Meat, which I love, and he has a show called The Kill Count, and he did one recently for The Shining, where like there's this whole there's like a line where it's slowly creeping over from reality and disbelief, or reality and supernatural. So the whole film pretty much makes it seem like it's just what they're seeing. Like they're all going crazy, so they're seeing stuff. Like Wendy, she doesn't see anything till the end, which shows that she's lost her mind as well.
Yeah.
Whereas like Jack is seeing stuff almost from the beginning, and obviously Danny can see stuff because he's got the Shining, so he can see all these supernatural beings. But there's also things like, like Danny gets hurt from the woman. Yeah. So
he gets physical.
But it doesn't show it. So was it just Danny that hurt himself? Or was it the woman that hurt himself? So that's bridging the line. It's kind of like, it's ambiguous. It's like we don't see it, so we don't know what actually happened. So it still could be in reality. But then there's the scene where he's locked in the storage cupboard, like the fridge or whatever. And then he starts talking to, is it Garson?
Mr. Grady.
Mr. Grady. Yeah, he's on the other side, and he's like, "You're doing a terrible job at this. She's got the better of you." And he's like, "For now, she's got the better of me. Give me another chance." And then he opens the door.
Yeah, which was
even though
locked.
Grady is not real.
Yeah.
So I would say that's like the one time where, that's where it's supernatural, because it breaks reality. Because like, who opened the door?
Yeah, because it wasn't Danny or Wendy.
No.
And there is supposedly no one else there.
Exactly. So it just shows like, I don't know.
And actually, talking about that YouTube channel, there is only 2 deaths in this whole film. One
Yeah.
which is Halloran, and then
Jack.
Jack Torrance himself. So for a horror film, it definitely is more about the psychological rather than
Yeah, exactly. It's not about
violence.
it's not about gore or violence or anything like that. Well, I mean, there's some gore, but yeah. So I don't know. Some of these theories out there just seem a bit like I don't know. I don't think they meant that, or I think it is just that. But that's the one scene where I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it is like supernatural, and you know.
And we have to, of course, talk about that photo at the end.
You want to talk about it now?
We can bring it back.
Okay, we'll talk about it now. So yeah, at the end, obviously, you know, Jack, you know, dies. He freezes to death after chasing Danny through the maze, and he gets lost. Fun fact, Jack fact. It's my new segment called Jack's Facts.
Jack's Facts on other Jacks.
On other Jacks, yeah. Every time they filmed in that maze, they kept like cast and crew would keep getting lost. So every so often there'd be like people shouting in the maze, going like, "Someone please help me and like find me." So they, you know, it was very difficult to film in it because it was a real maze and they kept getting lost in the maze, which I think's hilarious because you can just imagine it, especially when they're doing like all these like, you know, in the winter shots like at the end,
In the dark.
in the dark as well. You're like, oh my god, that'd be quite creepy.
I'm lost forever and I will end up like Jack.
Exactly. But yeah, at the end it pans through the hallway and it's getting closer and closer to this photo, and it's I think it was like a July 4th 1921, you know, in the Golden Room like party, and we see right at the front is Jack Torrance holding the sign for, is it the Overlook Hotel?
It's the
1921, you know.
And he's got this massive crowd of people in
yeah.
their the 20s.
Yeah, exactly, because the film's not set in the 20s, obviously.
Mm.
So obviously that, you know, it's obviously the ending's very ambiguous. It's for people to figure out and to, you know, make up their own decision what's happening. So what's your opinion of the ending? Like, what do you think what do you think it means?
I'm in 2 minds because there's the comment that Mr. Grady makes to Jack when they're in the bathroom about how you've always
been the caretaker.
Yeah, you've always been the caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm like, well, Jack when he was fine clearly wasn't the caretaker.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in relation to the photo? I think it's more a case of he's been taken by the hotel. Because you know when Wendy's running through the hotel and she gets to that point where she starts seeing all these skeletons of people.
Yes.
And Halloran has hinted that there's been bad stuff that's happened and good stuff that's happened like over the hundreds of years that it's been there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the fact that Jack died on the premise and he was taken over by the hotel, that the fact that he's in this photo is the fact that his soul was sold. Well, because even when he gets a drink, they say, "Oh, it's on the house," and he's like, "I want to know."
Your money's no good here.
Yeah, I want to know who's buying my drinks, and they say it's on the house. I think.
And he says it's not your concern at the moment.
At the moment, I think it literally means that his soul has been taken by the hotel, and the fact that he's in the photo now shows that his soul is a part of the hotel that's trapped there forever and ever and ever
and ever and ever. Actually, we'll get back to we haven't even spoke about them. We'll get back to that.
Oh yeah.
Actually, we haven't even spoke about that whole backstory. But I totally agree, Emily. That is 100% what I think happened.
Yay!
You know, it's he says at the bar, "I would sell my soul for a beer." Then all of a sudden, that's when he starts seeing people.
Yeah.
You know, that's when he starts seeing like the hotel's past and all that. And obviously he tries to pay the first time and he says, "How's my credit?" He's like, "Your credit's very good, sir." So he doesn't pay. And then the second time he goes to the party, it's a full party.
Oh yeah.
You
it's
know,
the
that's the
1920s
party, yeah. And yeah, he comes back, he tries to pay, and he's like, "Your money's no good here." And he's like, "Well, I'm the kind of man who likes to know who's paying for my drinks." And he goes, "That's not your concern. for the
Yeah.
time being.
The house is paying.
The house is paying. Yeah, exactly. And then he's just like, okay, goes off, does a little dance, and then he bumps into Grady,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who is obviously who he figures out is the past caretaker. He's like,
Yeah.
I seen your name in the paper. You chopped your wife and children to little bits.
This I think is where he starts. You can see that the fact he recognizes that there's still a little bit of Jack that's not quite gone yet, because he recognizes the guy in the story.
He's still there.
But then he easily kind of gets taken away into this whole thing of, oh, I need to do something about my family. Mr. Grady's right, and type thing.
Yeah, he's like, my family are still here. They're just running about somewhere, but it's your family you need to take care of. You know, your boy is bringing. He says a bad word. But he's like he's communicating with Halloran.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need to do something about this. And he's like, well, what would I do? And he's like, you know, you need to correct them.
Yeah, the way he says correct.
I love it. Correct them. Yeah, it's a great scene when they're in the toilet and he's just that's him getting told, you need to take care of this, your family. And so yeah, that's the way I see it. But he did the exact same thing, Grady, where so now, but he's like, but you've always been the caretaker, you know, you've always been here, you know. And he even Grady says, I've always been here. So now he's saying to him, you've always been here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the way I see it. Yeah, he said he would sell his soul. Then, there's people, he's seen people and stuff.
I have to say, because obviously Doctor Sleep is coming out soon, which we will...
On the 31st of October, tune in, because we will be reviewing it on that day. We're going to go see it on the 31st and then review it and upload on the 31st. Halloween.
But what I was going to say is I'm so intrigued to see what happens with this whole Shining thing, because at first Tony seems like a really creepy thing and spooky, but Tony seems to be the one that's trying to protect them in some ways.
Yeah, he's not a bad person. He's not influencing. Yeah, because the doctor says that at the beginning. It's like, does he tell you to do stuff? And then he's like, no. But no, actually, I don't think he says, I don't want to talk about Tony anymore.
Yeah.
So, but it's making it out like he's going to do bad stuff, but he doesn't.
It does.
He actually helps him.
Tony seems to be the one that helps, yeah, because he's saying, I don't want to go to the hotel. I don't want to go. And then he's the one that kind of gives the message of murder with the red rum.
Red rum.
Yeah, and is trying to show Danny why he shouldn't go to this hotel and things like that. So, The Shining is obviously different. I think The Shining isn't necessarily bad, it's the hotel that's bad.
Yeah.
Whereas when I first watched the film, I felt like Tony was bad as well. I thought his was the hotel.
No. But yeah, back to what I was saying. But yeah, I totally agree. He gave his life to the hotel. He died from the hotel, and now he's a part of the hotel. So the next person that comes to caretakes it, they'll go through the same thing, but they'll see Jack this time. I
think so.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. You know. But yeah, that was a great point. How Wendy's walking through the hotel, she starts seeing stuff, and then she sees like the dead bodies in the party room and stuff. So that's a really good point. But yeah, we totally glossed over the whole side story with Grady. So essentially, at the beginning of the film, he's like, the owner of the hotel is like, have you heard about the stories about this place? And he's like, no. And then he's like, well, essentially, our last caretaker went through an episode and went crazy and got an axe and killed his 2 daughters and his wife. So it's that whole kind of thing. That's why he starts questioning him, like, how do your family feel about this? Will they be okay? Are you going to be okay? And all that. And he's like, yep, this is a great idea. Yeah,
my wife's a fan of the horror novels.
She loves horror, so she could tell you anything about that. Which is a weird detail because it doesn't really, they don't go any further with that.
I know.
You do see like books in the house and stuff.
I wonder if
but,
it's maybe just a nod to the fact that this was based on the novel.
Maybe it might have been. But yeah, so he kind of warns him about that, and then even at the very start, Danny gets the vision of the hotel. He sees the blood coming through the elevator, and then he sees the twin girls.
Yeah.
You know, and there's that iconic like shot where the camera's following Danny when he's in the hotel, and it's like up on his big wheel, and he's just tracking him, and then he's going through the halls, and then boom, round the corner, two little girls, twins or whatever, holding hands. Come play with us, Danny. Forever.
Yeah.
So that's the haunting of the hotel. Let me ask you this: who do you think the woman in the bathtub is? Because at first I thought maybe it was Grady's wife.
Yeah, same.
But
here.
why is she in a bathtub?
And why is she young and then old?
Yeah.
All I can think is that
Really confused me.
because Halloran said to Danny that over the hundreds of years there's been good things and bad things that have happened.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Is that maybe she's like just a woman that drowned in the bath or something?
Maybe.
So she's just one of those people, but she is in the room 237,
which isn't the actual room in the book.
No. They
changed it because the hotel didn't had the number of the book of the room. But they didn't want it to like affect their sales or whatever, so they changed it to a room that they never had.
As if anything happening in the rest of the entire hotel wouldn't.
Yeah.
But so the thing is, Halloran's also scared of room 237 because Danny picks up on that, and Halloran's like, you have no need going in that room. So I'm not entirely sure what the significance of that room and the women in it is. But it's when he goes into that room that he gets physically hurt. So...
Yeah, in the book it's 217.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
About the woman?
The woman, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's at first because I was like, yeah, it's a younger woman, so maybe it was his wife. And then I was like, wait, no, because he killed his wife with an axe as well. So why is she in the bath? But now you've like opened my eyes a bit, and now he's just like, things have happened. Like, don't go into room 237. So that's obviously maybe another story from like the past. But yeah, I don't know if it's she gets young and then she gets old. I think it's more of that's the way she looked, and now this is her like deformed body from like being in like old dirty water for her. I don't know. It's a weird scene. It's like a really creepy scene actually, because you just see Jack going into the room, and then he has like that scared look, and then he slowly brings a smile, and it's just weird. Yeah. It's like even I feel uncomfortable like scenes like that where it's just like
but even the way the woman moves,
yeah, like, it's really creepy.
Her,
yeah,
it's really
she must have been cold.
Yeah, it's really it's really slow, really smooth, and like really calculated. Yeah, so even the way she does that is really creepy as well. Yeah,
it's a bit because after he goes in, but then he goes back to, obviously he's so ashamed of what he's done. He goes back to the room. He's like, I didn't see anything. There was no one there. And then he starts like kind of pinning the blame on Danny, like maybe he hurt himself and all that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's.
Are you finding any theories online?
No, I'm trying to stay away from theories because I have my own theory and I think that's it.
I am right.
I'm sticking to my gut. I'm not saying I'm right, but I feel like if you just keep going into theories and stuff, you start going like, oh, I don't know. You know, I do like watching. I do like when directors come out or writers come out and like on YouTube channels or whatever, and they discuss like fan theories and stuff. Because most of the time they're just like, oh yeah, I totally meant that. Like, yep, I meant that. Ooh. Or they're like, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So most of the time it's it's probably a lot more simpler than you think.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, but I don't know. Yeah, it was like I watched Jordan Peele talking about Get Out, and I think it was when someone was like, when the girl's eating the cereal, but she's eating it separate from the milk. Do you remember that?
The white separate from the colours, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
but then he was like, "Nah, I just wanted her to eat it in a weird way."
Yeah.
I think it was. I think he was. He said that he was like, someone was like, "Yeah, she's separating the whites from the colors." It's like, "Oh yeah, that's great." I just wanted to,
Yeah.
to eat her in the weird way.
It's one of those moments where it's like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah,
'Cause that
but it
sounds-
works, you know.
Yeah.
It definitely works.
I
So
know.
I think there's probably a lot of stuff like that in this.
Yeah.
Like you said, that the TVs were unplugged. I never noticed that,
I
but
didn't either.
yeah. So
Like, fully.
you could be right. It could be true, or it is just a set design flaw, and they never noticed.
Or they just didn't bother and think no one would nitpick.
I know they're probably just like, oh, God, there's no plugs.
There's no plugs on this set.
Oh well, just leave it.
It's so
Another big shout out I'd like to give was the soundtrack, the opening theme to this
Oh,
film.
yeah.
It's such a great shot. It's like panning through the hills and going through the waters and the lakes and all that. It's just good. It was written by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Ekind. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. It's based on Dream of a Witch's Sabbath from I don't know.
You're like, oh, as if you like recognised it.
I know.
was waiting for you to say
I thought it was gonna say something really interesting. I was like, oh wait, no, doesn't matter. But yeah, such an iconic shot, and an iconic theme. The you know, it's great. Which is what was playing at the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
The sound overall, like when Danny's riding on his big wheel, and there's the contrast of the riding over the rug and then riding on the harp,
Yeah.
riding over rug.
it's
Yeah.
quite It's like really impressive stuff. You know, like the sound editing is really good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. Like some of the editing's really weird in this film.
Yeah.
Some of it's like great, and then there's just so many crossfades at the first act.
But I feel like that might be just a reflection on the editing style of the time.
Maybe, but I don't know. It really bothers me. Like there's so many crossfades, and they happen like so suddenly, and I'm just like, oh.
But it could be. I mean, this is probably me just diving in too deep, but the fact that it happens in the first half where things are kind of normal is the fact that it's just like a gentle crossfade into the next scene, whereas once things start going a bit crazy, it's like cut to black, 8 a.m., cut to black, cut to black, cut to
I do like
black.
the title cards. That's cool.
So it's
Yeah.
so it becomes a more aggressive cut.
This
between
this
scenes.
is a weird nitpick. I hate the font they use throughout the whole
same.
film. Even like the title
Oh
card
my
for
God.
The Shining.
When the title card came up, I was like, oh my God, that's like
It's so bad. It's like
Word art.
neon blue, like Times New Roman kind of thing.
word art style.
Oh yeah,
stuff,
it's I don't know if I'm assuming it's intentional, like he wanted that, but it does not look good. You know, like why didn't they? I don't know.
Questions that may never be answered.
It's true. So Emily, give me your final rundown and opinion on the film, and what would you rate it out of 5 stars?
So my final rundown is that this is a great film if you've not seen it before, to kind of do your research and watch, because I feel like you'll appreciate it and have so many questions and things. But maybe watching it after that, it kind of loses that sense of tension and things because you know what's going to happen. But it still leaves me with lots of questions and lots of theories and things that we just don't know. So in that sense, it is a great film to keep watching because I feel like you can just keep picking up on new stuff and coming up with theories.
Yeah.
And the acting is something to be admired. So I think I will probably give it like out of 5. probably like a 3. Just because it is fantastic, but as a horror film now, it just doesn't really scare me.
Yeah, so average.
Average.
I could see that.
But for the acting and cinematography and stuff, probably 5. But as the film as a whole, for the storyline,
yeah,
not so much.
Yeah, fair play. For me, it's a bit of a weird one. When I first watched it, I was like, "This is the most overrated film I've ever seen. It's not that fantastic," but I still appreciated like the direction, the cinematography, the soundtrack, Jack Nicholson. But I hated everything else. I thought it was too long. It's really dragged out. All the interesting stuff you want to see is like pretty much at the end. You know, you want to see Jack go crazy and all that, but you know, obviously you got to build suspense. But I don't find it suspenseful. You know, I'm never on the edge of my seat. I'm never like creeped out. The only time I am the film did creep me out is the bathroom scene.
Yeah,
because it's just uncomfortable. It's like, you know, I don't want to see that. But my favorite thing about this film is definitely it's just the behind the scenes stuff. Like for the scene where Jack's breaking down the door, the props department made like an easily breakable door, like a really thin door, but because Jack Nicholson worked as a volunteer marshal, he could like tear it down in like one swing or whatever.
Yeah.
So then they had to actually get a real door for him to actually swing it. And apparently it took like 3 days to make that scene, and like it took like 60 doors and all that. You know, I love that stuff. Like to get the Jack agitated, they fed him cheese sandwiches, even though he hates cheese sandwiches. It's, you know, and Shelley Duvall and Stanley Kubrick's hatred for each other by the end of the film, like how she actually put herself through so much exhaustion because he was really pushing her. The stuff about Danny Lloyd, about just how like they're really overprotective with him, and you know, I love all that stuff because it makes the film more interesting. Whereas I feel like the final product, and I'm not the only one that thinks this, because at the time it was not well received.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like people didn't think it was a good film. And there's loads of films like that. See, when you think about like classic films, most of the time they're not well received at first. Like apparently the greatest film of all time is The Shawshank Redemption, but that did not do well at all. And it wasn't until it came out on video that it became well loved and received.
That is strange, isn't it?
So it's stuff like that, and obviously it's pretty much the same thing with this film. As time went on, it became more loved and appreciated, and then people realized how actually amazing it is.
So what would you give it out of 5?
Yeah, so yeah, let me finish my point. So overall, I love the filmmaking aspect of this film, and I love Jack Nicholson. And I like all of the characters. I do think that maybe Shelley Duvall gets a bad rap, but she gets a bit iffy by the end of the film. But yeah, I still believe this is kind of an overrated film. Like people would say this is their favorite horror film of all time. It's not scary. It's not. I don't find it suspenseful. I don't find it like all that creepy or whatever.
Yeah.
But all the technical stuff, like the blood coming out the elevator, it's such an impressive shot. They made the maze and they made the hotel different sets and all that. It's incredible to look at. Like the set overall is just amazing. It's so well done. But yeah, like overall, yeah, I think I would give it a 3 as well. I'll give it like 3 dead twins in the hallway.
You mean triplets?
Yeah, or maybe I'll give it 2, just to make 2 twins and the dead twins in the hallway.
Just to round it out.
Yeah, just to make it sound better. But yeah, I don't hate the film, but I think it's so overrated.
I think what we're saying basically is check out the behind the scenes facts about.
There's
this film.
like documentaries about it. There's one called Room 237, and there's stuff about the film, and it's so much more interesting.
Yeah, I feel like watch the film with doing research about the behind the scenes, and I think that makes it better.
Exactly, because what Stanley Kubrick was putting his actors through and the cast through, and like his different methods of like filmmaking and direction is more interesting than the final product, I would say. Even though it's a good film, but I get it. I get why people love it and stuff. It's just such a it's a well-made film, but I think it's a bit dragged out, and I don't like the opening. You know, it's really slow. Anyway, I digress. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and we are so sorry that we missed last week. We were on holiday.
We've been doing a lot of traveling, and we thought we could squeeze one in between traveling whilst also working.
Yeah,
and
it got a bit too much for us. We were like on holiday for like 2 weeks. We went to Alicante, and then we went to Venice. We had an amazing time, but now we're back. We're back for the spooky season. Tune in next week. We won't give it away what we're going to do yet, but tune in next week, and tune in for the 31st of October. We will review Doctor Sleep.
I'm excited actually now.
I'm excited, which is why we were doing The Shining. So hopefully it's a good film. I'm excited for it. I've not watched too many trailers. I watched one because we're in the cinema and it came up, but I'm trying to keep it as ambiguous as I can. But yeah, if you have any recommendations for us, please email us at themakedopodcast@gmail.com. Follow us at the Make Do Review on Twitter and Instagram.
I was going to say, if you have any theories of your own, let us know on social media what you think as well.
Please, we're always active on social media. We will try our best to message, but we probably will, because we don't have too many fans yet.
Please spread the word about the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Please subscribe. Available on Spotify and iTunes podcast and our provider TuneIn. But thank you so much for listening. My name is Jack.
My name has been Emily, and is still Emily. I don't know why I said that.
And yeah, that will do.
That will do.